Yo.
G'day. I wanted to ask you something. Have you ever played Fire Emblem?
No. What's that?
You know the game series that Smash Bros. Fans complain about all the time because it's overrepresented? It's the game like Marth and Icon stuff are from.
Oh, yeah, I know the one. Is it any good?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, actually, because not too long ago I beat the games that Ike's from, and there's a new Fire Emblem game coming out hopefully soon on Switch 2. Oh, man. The Ike games are kind of like a combined package, and as a combined experience, it was like one of the just the greatest RPGs I've ever played.
Oh, okay, so they're like RPGs.
Yeah, well, it's a tactical RPG series, and they're kind of like, they're the same as Final Fantasy Tactics and Pokemon Conquest, so I know you've played those too. I know as well we both quite enjoyed Baldur's Gate and stuff like that, and they're not like the same, but they're sort of working, the same parts of your brain, so they're kind of the same fun, but Fire Emblem's just got so much good stuff to it. For one, the gameplay for me is leaps and bounds better than the competition. Whenever I play another tactical RPG, all I end up doing is just comparing whichever one I'm playing to Fire Emblem. The basic premise of basically all of them is that you're the leader of an army filled with a bunch of unique characters that will all have their own stats and skills, and there can be a huge variety of different classes, allowing them to each serve unique roles. And even if a game gives you two units that are the same class, they'll have different stat growths or base stat values to make them still serve that unique role. Like maybe one has more defense, so they're better standing in front of your weaker units. Every unit when they level up will have a certain % chance for a stat to go up, so Ike, for example, has a 50% chance to gain 1 point in strength every level up, which means if you're lucky, a unit might end up outgrowing their defined archetype. You also gain XP whenever you fight, not just whenever you kill an enemy, so building your units is actually like its own subset of tactics. Each chapter is also a different level, or in the case of these games, a different map. You deploy a selection of units from your army, and go into battle, navigating them around the map in a way that kind of feels like chess, or at least it feels about as tactical as it, hence the name. I don't know. And you'll pit your units into one-on-one turn-based battles, where there'll be all sorts of things to consider, like the terrain you're fighting on, the weapon you or the enemy have, the accuracy of the attack, the chance to land a triple damage critical hit, which is what Marth, Lucina, and Roy's final smashes are, fun fact. Like any good RPG, there's a lot of ways to build your characters to become the best of the best, and a cool thing in Fire Emblem is the weapon triangle. Across almost all Fire Emblem games, the most important weapons are swords, lances, and axes, which all exist within this triangle. There are also a few other weapon types like bows, a whole range of magic spells, daggers, healing staves, even your bare hands in some of them. But a weapon that beats another in the triangle will have advantages in combat, like higher accuracy, and a weapon that loses will have disadvantages. So if your unit has a sword, it's usually best to make them fight someone with an axe for an advantage, and to avoid lances so you're not at a disadvantage. This ends up making it so that one of the key considerations is what weapons your army are using. You want to try and keep a balance of everything as best you can. In other RPGs, you might just make everyone use whatever the strongest weapon is, or just use the strongest version of whatever you can equip to them. But in Fire Emblem, axes typically have the highest damage, except if you just bring a bunch of axes into battle, you get destroyed by people with swords. In most of them, you also have to worry about a weapon's durability, so oftentimes you'll intentionally use a weaker weapon so that your stronger doesn't get broken before you face a strong enemy, like a boss or something. It makes it so that there's a lot more thought and consideration that goes into every turn, again, like chess. A lot of the gameplay design is really well done in the games too. Like sometimes they'll give you a unit at the start of a chapter who's really good with axes, and then there are a bunch of lance enemies, so you can use that new unit to destroy everything. Or other times they'll know that at a certain point in the story you'll face a lot of enemies that have really high physical defense, but very low magic defense, and your one spellcaster might not be the strongest, so you gotta do what you can to make the most out of them. There's a lot to think about with these games, and oftentimes at the start of every chapter you'll spend what feels like hours constructing your army to match exactly what you need them to do, but it never feels like a chore. It's a lot like building a Lego set, but 100 times cheaper, and you don't have to worry about bumping the table and smashing it everywhere, ruining your whole weekend. The more recent games as well really lean into that, and will have whole hub worlds where you can grow your army further by customizing their gear and skills, and most of the games let you interact with them on a more personal level with these special conversations called supports, which can be between any two compatible units, so you aren't just locked to talking to them as just the protagonist. The more recent games have a lot more involved conversations that are usually pretty funny, or in some of them have really good character moments. But on top of that, units that have a support conversation will get various bonuses when they fight together. Eventually, the preparations can become a bit repetitive, but when I say eventually, I mean it happened to me on my third playthrough of Fire Emblem Three Houses. In all honesty, it ends up becoming as enjoyable as the core game, because when you go into battle, it's not the team the game built or that grinding for XP build, it's what you built. Units are also acquired in a bunch of different ways. Some are just story progression, some you have to talk to in the middle of battle and convince them to join. Others might be in the most ridiculous random spots imaginable, and then that unit ends up being broken as hell, so you'll be glad you found them. And despite having like 10,000 characters across all the games, it's incredibly easy to grow attached to any of them. They end up feeling like real people, and it's incredibly fun to watch a character you like pull off a super high damage attack, because it ends up feeling less like you rolled some dice and more like this person performed an incredible feat. And that creates a fun way for you to become even more connected to your army. You'll struggle to not fall in love with a character who doesn't have any story relevance because they're an optional recruitment, but they just keep on destroying every enemy they come across. Another thing too is that this game has a permadeath feature. If a unit dies in battle, they actually die. Some characters that are too important to die will simply become unavailable in combat for the rest of your playthrough, but will still stay in the story, and if other characters that might be important for a specific chapter or any of the protagonists die, you'll just get a game over. But you'll feel so protective of these characters because their deaths are actually something you need to worry about. Newer games do have a mode where you can disable that, which will make it so that when someone dies, they just become unavailable for the rest of the chapter. I honestly prefer to play that way just because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and want to have every single unit that you can get in my army. So if a weak as piss one dies, I don't have to worry about loading a save, but I will admit that I am a huge pussy for doing that, because if you play your cards right, you'll never have to worry about it. But anyway, the later games will end up having a billion ways to make the characters even more unique, allowing you to give them certain skills, train them to use certain weapons, turn them into certain classes, so on. At first glance, all of these decisions and considerations you have to think about in every single chapter might seem incredibly overwhelming, but another thing I love about Fire Emblem is that it's very casual friendly. Unlike something like XCOM, but maybe it's just me that thinks it's a little daunting. I mean, it's not too surprising considering it's in Smash Bros and has always been a Nintendo series, but even still, they always create fun challenges, and on harder difficulties will be some of the toughest stuff you'll face in an RPG. I love all the ways you can interact with the games. I love all the tools they give you to fiddle around with. I love the way the games are designed to make you feel like a tactical mastermind all the time. But another thing I really love are all of the stories. Despite the fact that they are Japanese games with anime art styles, they depict incredibly realistic stories that set themselves in these European medieval fantasy worlds, meaning that you get colourful characters and character designs in these essentially historically fictitious worlds. There's incredibly cool looking stuff like the designs for armour and weapons, and it ends up feeling incredibly natural to go from generic iron swords to super cool anime stuff. It does still have its very anime moments here and there, but a lot of the time it feels like the games are retelling actual wars from our actual history. It's such a brilliantly balanced blend of East and West that is filled with incredible characters, as I've been saying, that are all accompanied by some of the most amazingly written dialogue you'll ever see. Even some of the older ones will have lines or scenes where I'm sat back in my chair in awe of the fact that not even Shakespeare could come up with half the stuff. I mean, Ike, for example, is a masterclass in dialogue writing. All of the dialogue in his two games are great, but his in particular is so good that it is literally the sort of stuff you have to screenshot whenever you can. It really helps to make it feel more real, but of course, still performative enough to make it entertaining and not just a reality show about war, because war's pretty serious. They showcase in such a beautiful detail the effects of war on those who fight and those who fall. And to help present these stories, the games have some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. When they first introduced voice acting with Ike's two games, it was, look, it was terrible. I'm not gonna lie. There were only a few cutscenes that were voiced and the actors must have been taking the piss or something, I swear to God. But then with the first 3DS game of Fire Emblem Awakening, which is what Chrom, Lucina and Robin are from, they actually started trying. A lot more of the game is fully voiced and it's all really well done. Three Houses, the one Byleth's from, ended up creating so much community positivity over its voice actors, which was all thanks to the actors and voice directors doing such an incredible job at bringing these amazing characters to life. But Fire Emblem Echoes, which was the 3DS remake of the second Fire Emblem game, oh my god! I am still waiting to this day to find a game with better performances than that. Every scene felt like I was watching one of the greatest theatre performances the world has ever seen on the most exotic stage the world has ever known, when all I was doing was just holding my 3DS while I took a dump or something. You know Whis from Dragon Ball Super, as in English dub Whis? Did you know his voice actor is the greatest voice actor of all time? I didn't either until I played this game. And another thing too with these games are the soundtracks. The final battle theme of Echoes echoes is actually what got me into the series in the first place, because I literally looked up epic Fire Emblem music on YouTube and it showed up. As soon as I heard it, I was paralyzed with the thought that I hadn't experienced this series yet. I mean, you've been hearing some of the songs in the background of my mic. Yeah, because the context of this video is that it's a Discord call. But I gotta show you some of this stuff, man. You will be convinced to play them the same way I was, with music like this. These games are incredible. All of them, really. Although, I've only ever played the ones that were localized in English because, believe it or not, this series really wasn't financially successful until the 3DS games, which was kind of the reason why Smash 4 ended up shoving so many Fire Emblem characters in there, both as a way to boost sales and as a way to capitalize on the surprising popularity of Fire Emblem Awakening. And honestly, if you play through them, especially the Ike ones, you'll legit never be able to pin down a reason for their previous shortcomings. They all feel perfect. Even if I end up having complaints about certain things, I still always have fun. Genuinely, there hasn't been a single Fire Emblem game that I played and didn't enjoy. I love all of them so much. And I don't know if what I've said has been enough to convince you, but if it is, you're probably wondering where to start. Currently, there are 5 of the proper games available on the Switch too, and you can also play a decent amount of them on the 3DS, especially if you are homebrew. There's a few spin-offs that you can get too, like a few Fire Emblem themed Dynasty Warriors games or a Shin Megami Tensei crossover game, although Fire Emblem Warriors is of course more a Dynasty Warriors game, and Tokyo Mirage Sessions is more of an SMT game. So looking at the actual Fire Emblem games, I'm sure whatever is most convenient would be what's best, and you know, realistically you can get all of them on your computer or whatever. But if you have the Switch Online subscription, you can try out the 2 GBA games that were in English, or if you have the expansion thing and a Switch 2, you can get Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. These 3 games are very straightforward with their gameplay because it was before a lot of mechanics ended up being introduced, so they can be good choices. The GBA ones though, considering their lack of things and the 2D graphics, because obviously they were on the Game Boy Advance, might make them less appealing to one accustomed to modern tastes. And in all honesty, Path of Radiance doesn't actually feel old, and in my opinion is a fantastic game, as I've been saying, so I would recommend it more than the other 2. The sequel, Radiant Dawn, is only available on the Wii, and I'll tell you right now that you will absolutely want to play it right after Path of Radiance, which is what I did on my Xbox of all things, even though I've owned it physically for years and had already started playing it on my Wii U. But theoretically you could wait until they add Radiant Dawn to the Switch, because they'll probably add Wii games one day, but given Nintendo's track record with their old games on Switch so far, you might be waiting about 20 years. Anyway, there's also Fire Emblem 3 Houses on the Switch, which has an incredible story and was definitely a lot of other people's first game, so it's a nice pick. The other Switch game, Fire Emblem Engage, is a very fan-servicey game, so some of the references might go over your head. Its story can still be understood regardless of your knowledge of the series, although I will admit it's not as good of a story as 3 Houses. The gameplay, however, in my opinion at least, is a lot better than 3 Houses, and it also lags a lot less and has better aliasing, because Three Houses had a really big problem with that. But then there's also the 3DS games. Awakening is definitely designed to be more welcoming to new players, so it's not too bad to start with. Fates was my first one, and has 2 different versions of Birthright and Conquest, which both have different stories, a different order you progress levels in, different units. They're practically different games. Birthright is also intentionally the easier one, and Conquest is the harder one, but I started with Conquest and managed to beat it despite having no experience. And the last 3DS game was Echo's Shadows of Valentia, which has an incredible story and voice acting, but it's very faithful to the game it's remaking, so there's a lot of weird stuff in it. As much as I love it, that one I would definitely recommend only giving a try after you've played 1 or 2 of them already, because otherwise it might be a bit frustrating. And finally, there's the upcoming Fortune's Weave, which when I first started recording this, didn't have a release date yet, but now it finally does. And so now I'm re-recording this bit so I don't embarrass myself. So, what are the choices? Well, anything really. They all have enough ways for you to learn, and the stories are all standalone stories, so all of them can be enjoyed with no prior knowledge of anything. Again though, do whatever you bloody well want. Maybe just skip the series entirely. I don't care, you prick. You know, you just sit there silently the whole time I'm doing this entire monologue, and you just don't even respond or react or anything like that. Like, what's even the point of me doing this whole thing if you're just gonna sit there and just not even say a
Alright, I'm back. Sorry, I was AFK. So, what are the Fire Emblem games? Are they like RPGs or something?
Are you joking?